Welcome to The Explainer. So, have you ever looked at a huge, successful company and wondered how it could just disappear? It happens all the time. And you might think it's because of bad luck or maybe some terrible management decisions. But what if I told you it's often the exact opposite? That doing everything right can actually lead a great company straight to failure. Today, we're diving into that exact puzzle: Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma.
To see what I mean, let's go back to 1986. There was this company, Digital Equipment Corporation, or DEC, and they were an absolute juggernaut. The business press said that trying to compete with them was like standing in front of a moving train. I mean, they were the best of the best, praised for their brilliant management and complete control of the market. And yet, just a handful of years after that quote, that train didn't just slow down, it flew completely off the tracks. DEC's collapse was fast, it was shocking, and it left everyone wondering, how? How does a company that is so good at what it does just fail? Well, it turns out this wasn't just a one-off story, it's a pattern. And that pattern is exactly what we're talking about. A researcher named Clayton Christensen became obsessed with this question, and he gave it a name: the innovator's dilemma. And here's the wild part. The central idea is that the very things that make a company successful, the stuff they teach you in business school, can become the very reason for its downfall. I mean, think about it. What's the playbook for a great business? You listen to your biggest, most important customers, you put your money and energy into the products that make you the most profit, and you keep making those products a little bit better every year. That sounds like a foolproof plan for success, right? What could possibly go wrong? Well, here's the catch. The problem starts when some new, weird technology shows up. At first, it's not very good. It's kind of clumsy, it underperforms, and your best customers, they take one look and say, "No thanks, we don't need that." So being a smart manager, you listen to them. You ignore the weird new thing and focus on what's working. And that right there, that's the trap. To really understand this trap, you have to know that not all new technology is created equal. Christensen splits innovation into two totally different types, and telling them apart, well, that's the whole ballgame. On one side, you've got what's called sustaining technology, and on the other, you have disruptive technology. They might sound kind of similar, but in reality, they are polar opposites, and they force established companies down completely different paths. So first up is sustaining technology. This is the easy one. It's all about making good products even better. Adding more storage to a computer, making a car a little more fuel efficient, giving a camera a sharper sensor. Your existing customers love this stuff. They'll pay more for it. And for big companies, this is their bread and butter. It's safe, it's predictable, and it's profitable. Disruptive technology, on the other hand, is a whole different beast. When it first shows up, it's actually worse than the existing products on all the things that mainstream customers care about. But, and this is the key, it brings something new to the table. Maybe it's way smaller or way cheaper or just simpler to use. It's useless to your current customers, but it's perfect for a tiny new group of users that the big companies barely even notice. Okay, enough theory. Let's look at a perfect real-world example of how this plays out again and again. For Christensen, the best case study was the hard disk drive industry. Just look at this timeline. It tells a brutal story. You had these giant 14-inch drives for mainframe computers. Then came 8-inch drives for mini computers. Then 5.25-inch drives for the first desktop PCs. Then 3.5-inch for laptops. And here's the crazy part. The companies that led one wave were almost never the ones that led the next. It was a graveyard of former champions. So back in the day, the companies making the big 14-inch drives were masters of their craft. They were incredible at sustaining innovation. Their mainframe customers always wanted more storage, more capacity. And every year, these companies delivered, making their drives bigger and better. They were doing everything their customers asked for. Then along come these little startup companies with a new 8-inch drive. Now, compared to the 14-inch monsters, this thing was a joke. It had way less capacity. The big companies took it to their best customers, who basically laughed and said, "Why would we ever want less storage?" So the big companies did the logical thing. They ignored it. And here's why that was such a fatal mistake. See, if you only look at capacity or cost per megabyte, yeah, the 8-inch drive looks like a loser. But it was better on metrics the old market didn't give a hoot about. It was way smaller and lighter. And those new features made it absolutely perfect for a brand new market that was just emerging: the mini computer. So these new companies started selling their worst drives to this new mini computer market, and it exploded. The old 14-inch companies, busy serving their high-paying mainframe customers, didn't even notice. And by the time the 8-inch drives got good enough and big enough for the mainframe market, it was too late. The old guard was already on its way out.
But what's truly mind-blowing is that this cycle just kept repeating. The successful 8-inch drive companies became the new market leaders, and then they got disrupted by 5.25-inch drives, which created the personal computer market, and then those companies were disrupted by the 3.5-inch drives that made laptops possible. The winners of one generation became the losers of the next, over and over again.
So, how does this keep happening? How does a technology that everyone dismisses as a toy or just not good enough end up taking over an entire industry? Well, it all comes down to these two competing lines, or trajectories. First, you have the speed at which a technology gets better, and second, you have the speed at which customers' needs actually grow, and these two lines move at very different speeds. Think of this blue line as what your average customers actually need. Sure, they always want things to be a little better, but their expectations grow at a pretty slow and steady rate. They could only use so much performance improvement at any given time. Now, a disruptive technology enters the picture way down here, well below what those mainstream customers would ever accept. But here's the kicker. Its performance improves at a ridiculously fast rate. Its trajectory is way, way steeper. It gets better fast. And this is the kill shot. Eventually, that steep improvement curve of the disruptive tech crosses over the slow and steady line of what the mainstream market needs. All of a sudden, it's not a toy anymore. It's good enough. And since it's almost always cheaper and simpler, it just takes over. For the old leader, it's game over. So, what does this all mean for us? I think the most important lesson here is that these massive, successful companies didn't fail because they were lazy or stupid. They failed because they followed the rules of good management. Every single decision that led to their doom was a logical, rational, data-backed choice. And that's the trap. Incumbents fail because they listen to their best customers, who tell them to ignore the new thing. They chase the bigger profits in their existing markets, not the tiny margins of a new one. All their systems are built to make existing products better, not to launch something small and weird. And for a company that needs to find billions in new revenue, a tiny $10 million market is just a distraction. They are institutionally blind to the very thing that will kill them. So this leaves us with a fascinating question. The next time you see a new product or service that seems kind of clunky, cheap, maybe even like a toy that nobody serious would use, pause for a second. Before you dismiss it, ask yourself, is it finding a small group of passionate users? And more importantly, is it getting better at a shockingly fast rate? Because that worst product you're looking at today might just be the thing that takes over the world tomorrow.